Hey everyone, welcome to my new tutorial. So it's finally time to use some geometry nodes to create a simple composition like this, and I really hope you will enjoy this one, and if you do, please don't forget to leave that like, it will really help my channel. And if you're new to the channel and you'd like to see more tutorials like this in the future, please hit that subscribe and additionally bell button if you want to get notified when I release something new. And if you're new to the world of 3D and Blender, and you want to become a 3D illustrator, go and check out my courses that are carefully designed to teach you beginner and intermediate skills in quickest and most effective way. For example, with the new Ultimate 3D bundle, you can go from simple cubic designs all the way to full character illustration in a matter of weeks. So if you're interested, please go check out the link in the description. Let's now jump right into empty Blender file, and first of all I will just select everything here, press X and delete, and now we'll need to create some assets and then jump into geometry nodes. So let's press Shift A and let's add a circle here, and I will modify the vertices to 12, that's all we need right now, and tab into the edit mode, press S and scale 4 times like this. And now let's press E, then Z to extrude this up, and let's press F to fill. Now we'll press I to inset and maybe make this a little bit smaller, and then E again to extrude. So this will be like a very simple base. And now let's hold Shift S and snap cursor to select it. Now we can tab out and let's press Shift A and we'll add another circle, and we can leave the vertices at 12. And now let's tab into the edit mode, press S to scale and F to fill, and let's just extrude this all the way up. This will be a base of our pillar. And now let's hit 3 for face select, alt click this loop, and we'll press I for inset and create an inset like this. And then we can press alt E and extrude faces along normals. Just like that, and let's do that once again. So press I for inset and alt E and extrude faces along normals again. And to make the pillar more interesting, we can press Ctrl R to create the loop cuts here and increase the number of them with mouse wheel. And now just left click and right click to release. And now we can press Ctrl B to bevel. And again, we are controlling the number of cuts with the mouse wheel, but I'm interested only in one segment, and very subtle bevel like this. And now press X and delete faces. So we have a little gap there. And now with the edge select active, let's alt click right here over the first one, and under the bottom one press F to fill. That will create faces there. And now let's alt click here under this one and here and press F again. So we basically separated this middle part here. If you press L hovering over here, you will see that it's separated, and you can just select it and drag it around like this. I just want to create some bevels around here. So before we do that, let's press A to select all and Shift N to recalculate normals, just in case we messed them up. And now let's go for vertex select by pressing 1. And for example, select one vertex here, and let's press Ctrl B then V to enable vertex bevel like this. So we can kind of cut into those pillars in this way. And I want to do the same here. And you can instead press Ctrl Shift B to make a bevel like that. And let's make this one smaller. And let's select this vertex right here and press G twice to drag it down all the way like that. And maybe we can make something like this on the other side. So let's do those bevels here and here, and maybe drag this one down. So we have some like interesting details. And now I want to create one more object, and that's some kind of rock. So let's press Shift A and I will add a cube, and let's press slash on a numpad to go into the local view, and let's press Ctrl 1 to add a subdivision modifier, and we can apply it right here. And now let's go into the edit mode, and I will switch this knife tool to bisect and basically create rock. Let me scale this on a Z-axis and just do slices like this, clear outer and fill. And I will do this several times around our object. Remember, you need to press A to select all before you bisect again. It can be a little bit tedious, but I tend to get very good manual results from this kind of approach. So let's do a rock like this. Yeah, something really simple. I don't want to spend too much time on it. I think this will be fine. So let's tab out and let's press slash on a numpad again to exit the isolation mode. And let's press G, then Y, and move it to the side. And we're basically ready to begin. So first of all, let's name our object. This will be the base. Let's call this pillar. And this will be a rock. So up until now, I would probably just use particle system to distribute some objects around, and probably an empty with an array modifier to create the circular array from the pillars. But there is much more control with the geometry nodes. And for this kind of scene and for this kind of distribution that I wanted to do, I really found it much more useful and flexible. So let's first create a circle that we'll use to distribute our pillars. So I'll press Shift A and add mesh, then circle. Let's tab in and press S to scale this up just like that. So this will be the circle on which we'll distribute our pillars. So let's just call these pillars. Now there are multiple ways how to enable geometry nodes. You can go into the modifiers and just add the modifier geometry nodes and then switch some of the views into the node editor, but you can just click the plus here in the workspaces, and in the general you will find the new workspace geometry nodes, and that will create this kind of layout, which is very useful because you have a spreadsheet here which will help you sometimes evaluate your geometry and read out all different values you need to be able to see. So let's create a new geometry node setup. And this is what you get when you create one, and basically it just connects input geometry to the output geometry and doesn't modify it in any way. So we will need to instantiate these pillars on the vertices of the circle. So let's press Shift A and we'll search for instances and instance on points. And let's just place it here, and we'll drag this geometry to the points here. And of course, we'll need some instances. So you can just click and drag the pillar here. Don't drag it over the viewport, and place it into the node editor. Let's place it somewhere here, and we can connect the geometry to the instance. So what we are doing right here, we are taking the input geometry, in this case the circle, and we are taking these vertices as points and instancing something on them, and that something is connected from this object geometry to the instance input, and we can now just drag instances into the geometry, and we have some pillars. So this is our basic setup, and we can just select this pillar, for example, and move it down or move it into a different collection, but don't worry about that just now. So we have this object, but we need to kind of scale it up around and rotate as we want. So scale should be pretty straightforward. Just click and drag above these three and move left or right to adjust the scale like this. And of course you can change the radius just by going into the edit mode and scaling the circle itself like that. But since we added those little details, it would be nice to create some kind of variation where we look at each pillar from a different side, so it creates an illusion of variation. But that wouldn't be possible, for example, with an array modifier. They would be all facing the same direction, and this is where the geometry nodes actually come in. So let's press Shift A and we'll search for random and plug in some random value here, and additionally we'll press Shift A and we'll search for combine, and we'll create a combine XYZ node. This is just to combine XYZ values to create a vector output that can be connected either into scale or rotation. So we'll connect it into a rotation, and now we'll connect the random value to the Z. So now we are creating vector with only Z modified, so we are able to rotate these around the Z axis, but we need to modify the min and max of the random value as well. So let's go from 0 to 360, so we can have different rotations all around. And now you can see we have really some variation, and that's super useful, and this really wouldn't be possible with some, regular distribution like array or something like that. So that's for the pillars, and let me just tab out here, select the pillar, and I will press M and create a new collection. Let's call this backup, for example, and we can just disable that collection so it's not in our face. And now I want to distribute some rocks over that base, so let's select the base and we'll add a new geometry node setup here as well. And again, we'll press Shift A and we'll create some instances on points like this, and we'll connect this geometry to the points, and then we'll select the rock and drag it here just as before and connect it to an instance. Let me move this to a side like this, and then if you plug it here, it will just replace your geometry and place these rocks over those points, which isn't what we want. So let's press Shift A and let's search for join, and we will join geometry here, and we'll join the instances with the original geometry right here. So we have the base still in place, but we are additionally instantiating rocks over it. But I don't want these rocks to be placed on vertices, I want to place them on faces. So let's press Shift A and let's search for faces, and we can pick distribute points on faces and just place it here and plug the geometry in the mesh input. And now we can plug these points here instead of the original geometry, and now these will be placed over on faces, and you can choose the density in which they are placed around, which is very useful. But then again, I don't want them to be placed on every face in the same way, so we can introduce some random selection, and you can see the selection input right here. So let's press Shift A and we'll add random and switch the float to Boolean and plug it here. So now not every face is getting that distribution, and we can lower the probability of the distribution on certain faces here in the random value, and additionally increase or decrease density. But these rocks are too large, so we'll need to modify their scale or rotation, same as before, and it's completely the same as before with the pillars. So let's press Shift A and we'll first of all add some random. Let me move this a little bit. And since we don't want to modify only one axis here, we can just plug the value here into the rotation. And now just press Shift D to duplicate this and plug it into the scale as well. And we have these two random values that we can now modify to either change the rotation or the scale. So let's set the rotation from 0 to 360, same as before. So we have some really different sets of rotation in place. And now with the scale, we can play around by increasing the minimum and the maximum. So I think the rocks should be maximum of this size, something like 0.2 something, and then we can make really small ones here. And now we can play with the distribution again. So we have two values that are important here, and that's the probability and density. So the probability, as I said before, determines which faces will get a distribution, and then density, how much will be then instantiated there. So let's increase the probability just a tiny bit like this, and then we can increase the density. So we have these like clumps of rocks around. And I really like this, but I don't want these rocks to be instantiated here on the sides. I just want them to lie flat on the top of the surfaces. And this is where the nodes really come in again, because so far this could be easily done with the particle system, no problem. But the moment you need to determine the distribution, first of all, you would need to weight paint. So that's a manual process. This is more procedural. And second, you can filter out different things that you wouldn't be able to. For example, placing these only on top, and we'll use normal information to do that. So let me just select some of these nodes and drag them away. And let's zoom in here a little bit, and we can see there is a normal output for distribute points on faces, and that's basically the value of each normal for each face we are trying to distribute on. And we can use the spreadsheet here, as I said before, to read out this information. And I'm using Node Wrangler for this, same as with the shader nodes. So if you don't have it active, go to the Edit Preferences, search for add-ons, and activate the Node Wrangler add-on. You will find it listed in the description. And now if you press Ctrl Shift and click the node, it will connect to viewer, and if you do it once again, you will cycle through the values you can read out. And now if you switch here to point cloud, you will see the viewer columns right here, and these are basically X, Y, and Z values of each of the normal. But we can see -1 here. That can only mean we have our normals flipped. So let's select the base here, And let's go into the edit mode, and we can double check by going into the overlays and enabling normals, and let's increase the size here. But there's nothing to see, but they're all in the bottom. So let's press Shift A and let's press Shift N to recalculate them on the outside. And now we can just disable normals in the overlay. And if you now tab out and look through the viewer once again, you will see that now we have values of 1, so the normals are pointing in the correct way. So let's just delete the viewer, and now we know that in the normal output there is a Z value that we are interested in. So let's press Shift A and we'll choose separate X, Y, and Z and connect it right here. And then we'll need to compare the Z value to 1. So let's press Shift A and we'll add the math node. And we'll choose to compare, plug the Z right here, choose value of 1 and epsilon of 0. We don't need any like error delta. We are not interested in any kind of fall off. That would be useful, for example, when some of the faces weren't completely straight up and we would need to introduce some kind of tolerance. So let's just plug this value here into the selection. And now you can see we only have the rocks instantiated on top of the faces, and they're not on the sides, which is exactly what we want. And basically, yeah, that's it. So this is our rock distribution, and now it's only about fine-tuning, like reducing the size and increase maybe the minimum size, playing with the probability of distribution, or maybe make it smaller and increase the density here and there. So that's basically all up to you. And now to make this a little bit more interesting, you can go back to those pillars and, for example, play with some other value like the Y rotation or X rotation to make them a little bit tilted so they're not so uniform. And then maybe we can bring this down tiny bit and we have some nice, you know, ancient ruins scene. And let's press M and move this into the backup. And I will now press Shift A, add a plane and scale it up to create the background. And let's just go to the layout, press N to open the sidebar, and I will use my Isocam add-on to add a true isometric camera and change the resolution to something like 1600 to 1200. And for example, we can add some sphere to create some kind of nice light inside. And maybe we can go here and bevel some of these again. And you can see how the distribution change when I modify the faces and create new. And it's really all dynamic. You wouldn't be able to do this with, you know, just a regular weight painting and particles. So I really enjoy this kind of workflow. I think I will do more of this in the future. So maybe, yeah, let me know in the comments if you like this kind of workflow, if you're interested to see more. And I will try to come up with more tutorials, more nice examples where, you know, geometry nodes are really useful as opposed to some standard approach. And now let's just switch to the material preview, and I will go to the render settings, enable some ambient occlusion and screen space reflections, switch these to cycles, enable GPU, and then sum denoising. Let's press Ctrl B, limit this view and choose to preview. Now I will select the sphere and just add an emission. Let's create something interesting like this. And now let's press Shift A and we'll add a light, area light, bring it up, make it a little bit larger maybe, and let's hold period on a keyboard to switch to 3D cursor, press R, then X and 45 degrees minus, and then we can just rotate it here and increase the strength to something like 2000 or, you know, 1500. And let's make this like a blue light, and the sphere in the middle can be really orange. Maybe this can be even like a greenish tone like this. Yeah, I really like this. And now in the world settings we can introduce some violet and we'll have a nice color combination like this. And of course you can make this more interesting by moving some of these spheres around a little bit more, or, you know, placing some of the lying pillars around. But basically this is it. This is what I wanted to show you in terms of geometry nodes and their use as opposed to the particle systems for distributions and stuff like this. And you can see how this can be really useful. It gives you a control you didn't have before. So again, I really enjoyed it, and I really hope you enjoyed it too. If you did, please, again, don't forget to leave that like. It will really help me. And again, if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe. Thank you all for watching and have a wonderful day.